Great job. Oh, my God. I feel like there's nothing more to say. It's like, whoa, but there's a lot. I want to know what kind of house you live in.
Oh, well, we live in my grandfather's house, Andrew Geller's house, and it is a farmhouse built in 1892 in Northport. Can you hear me?
There you are.
Ah, okay. I just hold it closer.
So he lives in his grandfather's house.
Yeah. It was built in 1892, so it's a Victorian-era farmhouse.
What did he do to it? Did he keep it as a Victorian-era farmhouse?
Well, it looks that way outside, but he bought it in 1951. He waited for my grandmother to go visit her parents down in Louisiana, and as soon as she left, he knocked down a bunch of walls, and he made it an open plan. So it's a Victorian-era house with an Andrew Geller interior.
Wow. And what does that mean when you say Andrew Geller interior?
Well, he kind of made it the way he would design one of his beach houses. For example, back in 1892, the original owners of the house had a servant who had a back entry into the house, and it went straight up to the third floor into the attic. And that was all closed in. There was a door, it was walled in. He knocked the wall down, took the door out, and basically the stairs come right down into the kitchen. But it's hard to describe. You'd have to see it. It looks, with the woodworking and everything, it looks like one of his beach houses in there.
Was he all about comfort?
He loved comfort. Is that what he was all about? I would say that it was probably more so about fun. You know, he never grew up.
You can sort of see that.
Yeah,
in the film.
He loved being a kid, and so that was what he wanted to share with his clients. He wanted to give them a place that they could go to that was sort of like a fantasy. You know, that they could leave wherever it was they were from and just live a dream.
You know, it's interesting because a lot of the houses that we see and that you showed in some cases, and the homeowner spoke to this, because I wanted to ask you about this, that feeling of being required to live a certain way in a certain style house, that he said he didn't want to change it too much, and he had to realize that he had to live the way the house demanded, right?
Right.
And sometimes that can be seemingly very severe almost, right? And not with a sense of comfort. And I've always wondered about people living in homes that are so beautifully designed and put together, and how much comfort do you have living in a space like that? How much can you claim it for yourself, you know?
Well, it's funny. I don't know how to explain it, but when you go into one of those spaces, when you go into one of those beach houses, for example, it feels incredibly familiar. And maybe it's because it is all wood and there's so much glass and you're looking out into nature, and it's warm, it's comfortable, but it's also very natural. And you don't feel like you're hemmed in, even though the spaces are very small. So it feels like you're living in the outdoors.
You know, I wonder, would you comment on what's now being called the tiny house movement? Have you all noticed that? More and more people wanting smaller and smaller. These are what, 350, 500 square feet? Yeah. This is something that seemingly your grandfather pioneered back in the day, right? We were talking, and how big are these homes that he designed? Oh, average.
Well, the Perlroth house, let me think, the Perlroth house, 900 square feet. So, yeah, absolutely. In fact, in 1958, he did a concept design for Esquire magazine called the Esquire Weekend House. And the idea behind it was that it would cost no more than $3,000, that you could actually fold it up and put it on the top of your car and drive it around. You know, there was actually an image of it in the film. It was a color rendering. It showed it on stilts on the beach, and there was a bicycle parked underneath it. Yeah, actually, there was room for a refrigerator, room for a bed up there. You know.
Well, this is what people are doing. They're putting houses on wheels and driving and going wherever they want, right?
Yeah.
Is this something that you could say that he started, or are people hearkening back to simplicity in some senses?
Well, I think they're doing it out of necessity.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, who can afford anything anymore, you know? And to be able to say that you have a vacation home or you have a place that you can go, that in itself is something that's very special. So it doesn't matter what size it is. The smaller it is, the less expensive it is, the easier it is to care for. So there's a lot of good that comes out of it.
Paul Goldberger said that he thinks we're past the McMansion phase. Do you feel we are?
Well, he said that in 2011.
Oh boy.
That's when we interviewed him, and that's kind of the way it felt at the time.
At the time.
But
yeah.
Things have changed a little bit since then. So.
But then again, I also, you know, I think that it fuels anger as well in a lot of us. So they were commenting about they've never seen people get so upset with architectural review boards and all of that. I hate to think that we hold it against people who want a larger home or a larger space.
Right. Well, everybody's entitled to have whatever they want, and that's absolutely
well
fine.
Within
yeah, right.
guidelines.
Right, exactly. But you know, when it comes right down to it, architecture preservation is really about a couple of things. It's about us wanting to hold on to something that we really love. You know, it's about perhaps holding on to what we remember when we were growing up.
So it's all nostalgia?
It could be nostalgia. It could also be, I'll give you an example. In Palm Springs, California right now, in just the past year, 2 Donald Wexler buildings have been torn down. Now, he was a prolific mid-century modern architect. He passed away last year, and as soon as he died, 2 of his really iconic structures in downtown Palm Springs were torn down. And well, you know, in a way, you can understand it because the property owners, well, it's a complicated situation. The land was actually leased from the Native American tribe out there, and the lease ran out. And so they had other plans for that property, and you can understand that. But I think the thing that bothered me the most about it was that I knew Don, and I loved Don. He was a beautiful man, and so to see his work and to see what he was so proud of disappearing. This is the work that people produced. This is what they loved, and in many cases with mid-century modern architecture, it was their art. It was you know, all of my grandfather's work, the Andrew Geller houses. Those were sculptural forms. You know, he always had the opinion that, well, you know, the client owns it and they can do whatever they want to, and 10 years from now they can tear it down and we'll build a new one, you know. But when it came right down to it, whenever someone would tear something down that he did or alter it beyond recognition, it hurt. So I think a lot of it has to do with the way we personally feel, what we miss, and who we miss.
Is that why you did this film?
Yeah, well, you know, it's funny. My feeling on preservation has kind of changed a little bit over the years. Not that, you know, I'm certainly not giving preservation up. That's I love, you know, architectural preservation, but it used to be, you can't do this because, you know, you're getting rid of our cultural heritage and whatnot. And while that is true, I think it's become a much more personal thing to me now, you know. I get
like a crusade? Kind
well, I'm
or less of a crusade in a sense.
Yeah, I guess it's less of a crusade in a sense. I want to see these things preserved, but I found that if I get too emotionally involved with it, I can't handle it. You know, so unfortunately, you have to deal with whatever rolls around.
Amen. Yeah.
You know?
And this is a good way to do that, right? Is to put it into a documentary form?
Well, we kind of felt, and this is my wife Tracy, yes, by the way, if you want to raise your hand. Okay. I mean, we basically made this film together. She's my partner in the business and partner in life, and the chief researcher on this project. So I think she
Wow.
did a wonderful job.
Bravo.
Our reason for making this film is that we were seeing a lot of the architecture disappearing. And we realized that the reason that it was happening was because people didn't know it was even here. Or they viewed it as being disposable, you know, that Jetson-looking thing that's, you know, that we can get rid of that, you know, or that was what Mom and Dad built, or,
Yeah.
you know, and we want something of our own. But nobody knew what the story was behind these structures. They would look at the buildings, but they'd have no idea who made them. They'd have no idea why they made them, why they did what they did, what made them so special.
I think maybe part of it too is that it's recent past. It's more recent than, say, you know, the 1800s, the 1700s, which we view, I think many of us view with, you know, a sense of historical preservation. That's real history. But I still can't get over the fact that 1970s items are now antiques and collectibles.
Yeah.
And it's like you almost don't want to admit that, but that's becoming a form of preservation, or things that you need to preserve.
Yeah.
That's kind of hard to face in a way.
It is. I think I'm constantly faced by the fact that I'm becoming an antique.
But you're a collectible as well.
Oh, well, thank you.
But the idea that modernism is past.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, aren't we in a modern world?
We're in a contemporary world.
Thank you. Okay, I get them confused. Yeah. And we're in postmodern now.
Well, postmodern is
We're past postmodern.
We're past postmodern.
Post-postmodern. So what is the
postmortem, I'm
movement
sorry.
now? Well, how would you describe it, Jake?
Say that again?
What is the movement now?
Boy, that is a very good question, because I guess it depends on what region of the world you're in. You know, I mean, here there is a movement within some circles to build contemporary structures, to go sort of back to the styles of the past. There are architects that specialize in doing work like that, and I think that's wonderful. But at the same time, we're seeing a lot of traditional styles coming up. We're still seeing gigantic, oversized Victorian and colonial houses being built.
Do you just gag when you see that?
Well, you know, I understand what the homeowner or what the architect is going for. I do understand that, because the original styles were beautiful. But when it's a showpiece, when it's meant to be something that's sort of pretentious, you know, look at me, look at what I can do, well, then that's when the architecture kind of gets lost. Because it's not really functional, it's not really beautiful, it's just big. So
we're in the big movement.
we are in a big movement. Although there is very slowly this movement towards preservation. So we're seeing some houses that are preserved. The Pearl-Roth house has been preserved.
Yes.
Check it out, 615 Dune Road in...
Screeching brakes.
Yeah.
Great.
It looks exactly like that 3D rendering that we saw in the film. It looks identical to that.
Nice,
So.
nice. And you have an accompanying book?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, this is where I plug my book. Andrew Geller Deconstructed.
It's
And
wonderful.
at this point, I think we have 9 copies left here. So
Okay.
if you're interested, I'll even sign them.
All right. Jake Gorst, thank you so much. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautifully done. Nice to meet you. Thank you.